It's very nice to be here with all of you. And I thought this morning I would talk a little bit about that teaching that Ajahn Chah often gave about giving it all you've got. And I thought I would start with a short reading from Stillness Flowing. I imagine you might know about it. This is the biography of Ajahn Chah written by Ajahn Jayasaro. So Ajahn Chah was talking about this to the monks. Don't be hesitant in your practice. Give it everything you've got. Make the mind resolute. Keep practicing. However much you listen to Dhamma talks, however much you study, although the knowledge that results may be correct, it doesn't reach the truth itself. And if that's the case, then there's no end to doubts and hesitation. But when the truth is realized, there's completion. Then whatever anyone might say or think on the subject is irrelevant. It's naturally and irrevocably just that way. Others may laugh or cry, be happy or sad, but when the natural mind has arisen, it's completely unwavering. The mind that has entered the stream is not easy to distinguish from the mind of someone crazy. The two are very similar. They both deviate from the norm, but they differ in the qualities they possess. So this was the result of a profound experience that Ajahn Chah had. And he really, emphasized to everyone, I'm sure, that, giving it all you've got is the way that you really make progress in the practice. And of course, there's definitely a need to use wisdom to know what to give all we've got to. And that can be on more finer grain levels with, how to practice. But sometimes it's also the case that people give all they've got to something that doesn't really yield good results. And I thought I'd share a couple of stories from the time of the Buddha. And I don't know if you've heard about the three Kassapa brothers. You may have. This is a story that's in the Vinaya. And it happens it's not long after the Buddha was enlightened. He had probably by this time ordained about 200 monks, and he had sent many of them off in different directions to teach the Dhamma. But then he went to this encampment of one of the eldest Kassapa brother. There were three brothers who were teachers of fire worshippers, natted hair ascetics, I think also was the same, maybe not, but they were fire worshippers. And the eldest one had 500 followers. So 500 fire worshippers out here in this hermitage. And the second brother had 300 followers. The third brother had 200 followers. But the Buddha went to the eldest brother and he asked him if he could stay in their fire chamber. And Kassapa said, well, it's okay with me, but there's a really fierce naga in the fire chamber, and it's poisonous and it's very powerful and it will kill you. And the Buddha said, can I stay in the fire chamber? And he got the same answer, and the third time, and you know how it goes usually. And then finally Kassapa said, well, as you wish, go ahead. And so the Buddha went in to the fire chamber and spread a mat, sat down to meditate, and the naga was angry and it puffed smoke. And the Buddha, through his supernormal powers, puffed smoke back. And then the Naga got really angry and started to produce fire. But the Buddha, it says in the text, immersed himself in the fire element. And his thought was, I'll counter the Naga's fire with fire, but it'll be a fire that won't harm any part of him. It won't harm his skin or anything. So he countered the Naga's fire with fire that would not harm him. And so there's all this smoke and fire coming out of the fire chamber, and all of the fire worshippers are outside. They're going, oh dear, that beautiful monk is toast. And after a while, it all died down. And in the morning, the Buddha came out of the fire chamber. And they were all very surprised. And he said to Kassapa, here's your Naga. And he opened his bowl and he showed this snake curled up in his bowl. And Kassapa thought, wow, this monk is really powerful. But he's not an arahant like me. And then as the Buddha stayed in that area, he was not in the fire chamber apparently, but right there with them, he proceeded to show other supernormal powers and miracles. I think there are about 16 miracles. And every time this Kassapa would say, wow, he's really powerful, but he's not an arahant like me. And finally, the Buddha thought to himself, I don't think this guy's ever going to get it. He just keeps on thinking he's an arahant, and he's not. And so the Buddha decides to just tell Kassapa. So he said to Kassapa, you're not an arahant, and you're not doing anything that will lead you to become an arahant. And at that moment, Kassapa fell to the ground and begged the Buddha to ordain him and teach him. And the Buddha said, well, you've got 500 followers. You need to talk to them. You need to talk to your community. And I have to say, I always admire the way the Buddha handles these situations. It's not at all about, yeah, come follow me. It's really, he's always concerned about the people who are going to be affected. And I think that that's really beautiful. And it's just as an aside, when I was doing my training in ministry school, I was with, it's a interfaith group, but the foundational teaching was Kriya Yoga. And I practiced in that community for 7 years. During that time, I was visiting Thailand and visiting Abhayagiri a lot. And I asked Ajahn Pasno and Ajahn Amaro tons of questions. And never once did I get a hint that they thought, or they never indicated, well, you should just leave that group you're in, or you should join us. None of that. And I really appreciated that. By the time I was ready to become a student of Ajahn Pasano's, I had so much trust that it was really without strings, without ego, without trying to build something up. It was beautiful. I also had trouble finding the donation box at Abhayagiri in the early years. It was on top of a register, a basket, that if you look into the basket, you'd see the little sign that said donations. If you don't ask for directions, you never find it. So I also appreciated that. It was a pretty different scene than what I was used to. Anyway, back to the Kassapas. So Kassapa went to his followers and he said, I want to become a disciple of the Buddha, of Master Gautama. And if you want to join me, that's great, but you can just do whatever you see fit. And they said, no, if you do that, we're going with you. We felt this way since the fire chamber thing. This is great. So the Buddha suddenly had 500 more followers. And then the story continues about how the other two Kassapa brothers and their followers came and joined the Buddha, became monks in the Buddha's sasana. And I'm telling you this story because these people were giving it all they had. They give it all you've got, the way they lived, the dedication to keeping the fire going, all of their rituals, their ascetic life. And then the Buddha gave the teaching of the fire sermon, as you may know. And really, really touching where these men were in their practice, saying everything's burning. The eye, all of the sense organs, all of the things that they sense, including the mind and its thoughts, all the feeling, all the consciousness for each of the sense doors, all of the feeling that arises, it's all burning, it's all on fire. And then he gets to the part where when you realize this, disenchantment arises and the fading away of passions. Oh, I forgot probably the most important part. What's it on fire with? It's on fire with greed, hatred, delusion. It's on fire with birth, aging, death, sickness, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. That's what it's on fire with. And then the disenchantment comes, the fading of passions for all of that. The wisdom, the insight of awakening, of the cessation of suffering and awakening and knowing, seeing for yourself. So this 1,000 fire worshippers all became arahants with that discourse, just like that. And you think, how can such a thing be? But I think it's because this is my deduction. I think it's because they were given it all they've got already. They were ready. They had already learned how to be renunciant. They had already thrown themselves completely into the spiritual life. They needed to be putting it into the right thing. So, that's one example. How giving it all we've got, even if it's not quite on course, still can help us develop good qualities and an openness and a readiness to hear the Dhamma. Fortunately for us, we already have come in contact with the Dhamma. I want to share one other example with you. This one I particularly love because it's a bhikkhuni. One of the Arahant bhikkhunis, with her verses in the Therigatha. This is Bada Kundalikesa. And I'll read it first and then I'll explain. My hair mown off, covered in mud. I used to wander wearing just one robe. I saw fault where there was none, and no fault where there was. Leaving my day's meditation on Vulture's Peak Mountain, I saw the stainless Buddha being honored by the mendicant Sangha. I bent my knees and bowed, and facing him, raised my joined palms. Come, Bada, he said. That was my ordination. I've wandered among the Angans, the Magadhans, the Vajis, Kasis, and Kosalans. I've eaten the alms food of the nations, free of debt for 50 years. Oh, he has made so much merit, that lay follower, who is so very wise, he gave a robe to Bada, who is released from all ties. So Bada Kundalakesa was following a different group in her wandering with her hair cut off and covered in mud and wearing one robe. That's seriously ascetic. I mean, the bhikkhunis have 4 robes. We have the 3 that the bhikkhus have, the lower one, this one, the upper one, and the double one. And we have always a shirt or a jacket. That's the 4th, because women need a little more covering. And she used one robe. That had to be really hard. And clearly, ascetic life. And she didn't have the right teachings. So she thought some things were wrong that weren't wrong, and thought some things were right that were actually wrong. And isn't this how it is in the world? We can easily believe the wrong things if it's only based on belief. But because of her giving it all she's got, when she saw the Buddha, she knew immediately. And then the part that's really endearing is that the Buddha ordained her on the spot by saying, "Come, Bada." And this is also the way in the beginning he would ordain the monks. "Come, bhikkhu." That was all it took. Before more people got involved and it got complicated. So this, where it says that she wandered among all these people and eating the alms food without debt, means that she was an arahant. To be debt free, the Buddha said, in being an alms mendicant, you have to realize nibbana, be completely free. Otherwise, you're always kind of not fully repaying the support that you're given. So it's another encouragement to give it all you've got if you're a monastic. And she wandered for 50 years without death. She was an arahant for 50 years. It's a beautiful, inspiring story. And then I like that part at the end where she praises the man who gave her the robe, probably gave her the robes to be in the Buddha's Sangha. I'm just going to read it one more time for you. My hair mown off, covered in mud. I used to wander wearing just one robe. I saw fault where there was none, and no fault where there was. Leaving my day's meditation on Vulture's Peak Mountain, I saw the stainless Buddha being honored by the mendicant Sangha. I bent my knees and bowed, and facing him raised my joined palms. "Come, Bada," he said. That was my ordination. I've wandered among the Angans, the Magadhans, the Bajis, Kasis, and Kosalans. I've eaten the alms food of the nations, free of debt for 50 years. Oh, he has made so much merit, that lay follower who is so very wise. He gave a robe to Bada, who is released from all ties. So, giving it all you've got, giving it to the right thing. We also have to have some sense of balance. Like, giving it all you've got doesn't mean you stay up all night every night. You have to sleep, right? You have to balance all of the other things that we need to do. Whether you're a monastic or you're in lay life, there's always a lot to take care of, including people, including our own health. So it's like, how do we know if we're doing enough? How do we know if we're balancing this in a good way? And then the voice that comes into my mind, I don't know if you can see Ajahn Gunha's picture up there, but Ajahn Ganha would say, wisdom solves the problem. We have to use wisdom to solve the problem. But how? So one thing that we can do is look at what it is that's driving us, either to put all our effort into things of the world or, whatever we do. The beauty of Ajahn Chah's teaching was about this was whatever you're doing, give it all you've got. If you're sweeping, give it all you've got. If you're cleaning the bathroom, give it all you've got. If you're going to bed at night to sleep, give it all you've got. In other words, stay mindful and present and committed and joyful. This is one of the things Ajahn Ganha really emphasizes. And Ajahn Ganha, in case you don't know, he's Ajahn Chah's nephew. He trained with Ajahn Chah when he was very young, and very highly attained monk. And he constantly talks about giving it all you've got, being energetic, being mindful and present and happy, filled with joy and an attitude of giving, no matter what we're doing. So that's good, but we still have to have some sense of how much, what's the right amount, like Ajahn Chah would say, the right amount. And I think there are a couple of things we can look at. We can look at what's driving us. Why am I doing this? Is it an ego, underlying sense of self, kind of impetus? Is it something that's related to the 8 worldly winds? Is it about, you know what they are, right? Gain and loss, praise and blame, fame, disrepute, pleasure and pain. What's behind my choices? And then, it could be the worldly winds or the worldly wounds. It's like we do need to take care of the mind, help the mind heal, but not fall into the traps of letting things enter the mind and remain that are not liberating, that are not helping us become free of suffering. So I really want to leave you with the emphasis of trusting in awakening, trusting that if we give it all we've got with happiness and not tension, with wisdom and joy, Nibbana is available. This is our birthright. This is what comes from following the Noble Eightfold Path. If we do this practice the way the Buddha laid it out, we will awaken. I was very inspired and relieved when I heard that from a monk at Wapananacha a long time ago. And it's true. Ajahn Chah says it's a natural unfolding. So I will leave my comments there and look forward to your questions to sort out the nitty-gritty. So thank you.
Ayya, I'm not familiar with the 8 worldly winds. Is it possible for you to expand on that? And another question, perhaps, I'll leave it with you. If this time, then you may address it. I mean, there may be other people who want to have questions as well. How much does intention help us with giving it all? Also, to be mindful of the fact that intention needs to not be attached or egoistic as well. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So the 8 worldly winds, I think they're called the worldly winds because they kind of blow us around. And they're these pairs, 4 pairs of experiences that we all have. Pleasure and pain, for example, we very much want to get rid of pain and we want to have pleasure. So we push things away and we pull things towards us. And there's a lot of suffering involved. Gain and loss. So when we gain something, we're excited. And when we lose something, we're dejected, we're sad. And so again, we get kind of pulled back and forth, pulled emotionally swayed by these things. And the same with praise and blame. We all know how it feels when we feel blamed and when we receive praise. And the last pair is fame and disrepute, getting a bad reputation, or people saying negative things about us. all of these 4 pairs have this quality of kind of throwing us off course or out of balance, pulling us one way or another. And these are not the reasons to be pulled off balance. If we really understand the Dhamma, we develop our practice and we see this coming. And we don't get so excited when we get praised. We know what's coming around the corner. There's going to be blame too. I had one day where someone told me I was the most selfish person. So I was only thinking of myself. And literally 2 hours later, someone told me they thought I was the most giving, selfless person they had ever known. You know how it can be. So that's the 8 worldly. They're worldly winds. And the practice, of course, is to experience these things, take them in, understand them, but not to take them into the heart in a way that blows us around, recognizing that there are these ups and downs, and that's just the nature of samsara, the nature of this world. So there's that part. And then intention is very important. That's where it starts. The Buddha talks about how the mind is the forerunner of all things, and the intention that we set really makes it possible to really give things our best. So that's what I would say.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much, Nitya. Yasna?
Thank you, Ayya. I was wondering if I may ask, how did you balance the demands of your worldly life with your spiritual training and aspirations? Thank you.
Well, it's hard when you have small children, and but you can probably find ways. I remember kind of sitting them down in front of the TV and going into the next room and meditating. My daughter is not like that. She has them meditate with her, and she only gives them a certain amount of screen time. So she's way ahead of me where I was then. In terms of my most concerted practice came when they were older, and I had already finished my master's degree in computer science and was well into my career. And then it's like the big shift happened around when I was about 40. And I started to really put much more emphasis on the spiritual path. And it didn't take long before I knew that's where I wanted all my energy to go. And so fortunately, even though I don't feel like it was ever my calling, the high-tech world gave me the material support that I needed in order to do that. So I guess really what I would say is it depends. We have to look at what our conditions are. And when the conditions are very demanding, whether it's family members that need care or it's something we have to do to earn a living or whatever, the more we can bring the practice into each activity we have, the more enriched that activity becomes, and the more enriched people are, whether they even realize what you're doing, they really benefit a lot. Our mindfulness and our development of the heart, our development of the Brahma Viharas, and our development of wisdom, and the letting go of the desire for the material world. And so that helps us make better decisions about how to spend our time. And it makes each activity that we're engaged in part of the practice.
Thank you, Ayya.
You're welcome.
Do we have any more questions? Yasna, do you want to take down your hand? Thanks, sweetie. Do I see? Wave wildly, because I'm negotiating two screens. Did anybody? Patrick, did you want to? No? Janet, did you?
Thank you. Hello, Ayya. I really enjoyed your talk. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I had wanted to ask you about, as you know, we're in the midst of this pandemic, and here in Toronto, we've been in lockdown for a long time. It's just lifted a little bit, and then my sense is that everybody's so wanting it to end, and we're running out of patience, and we're probably not following the guidelines as closely as we should be following. Our vaccines have just started to come out, so people over 80 and our healthcare workers and our people and seniors are getting vaccinated, but a lot of us are still waiting, right? So I just wanted to ask you about the sense of patience that we need, because we're tired. We just want life to be, I know it'll be the new normal. I don't think it'll be back to normal, but I just wondered if you wouldn't mind speaking to that a little bit. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, of course, patient endurance was spoken of by the Buddha as the greatest the most valuable practice, because we need it in everything. Everything we do that's difficult. And if we want to really change, which we're going to have to do if we get enlightened, if we're not enlightened now, and we look to that happening and that realization coming to us, we will have to change, or we will change as a result. And those changes are for the good, relief from the clinging. And so all of it takes patience. It takes patient endurance, that we really have to encourage ourselves and encourage one another to stick with it. And to remember that it is impermanent. It may seem like it's dreadfully long, but it is going to end. And I even have some hope that it will be back to what we think of as normal, because it's a good chance that if people get vaccinated, and enough people get vaccinated, and people are careful enough to stop the spread, that we can kind of control this, like other diseases have been controlled in the past through vaccinations. And so I think it's reminding ourselves, yes, taking in, kind of acknowledging the fact that this is so hard, acknowledging that it's frustrating and difficult, and we're sick of it. And the Buddha always, he has us turn towards what we're experiencing. You don't just brush it off, say get over it. that's not how we can manage it, but first acknowledge, yeah, I really am tired of this. We really are feeling like this has gone on too long. But then once we acknowledge it, a little bit of relief comes, and then we can say, and we'll just stick with it. We'll stick with the goals, we'll stick with the guidelines, we'll do the right thing for our sake and for everyone else's sake, remembering that this is important. This is for the safety and protection of everyone. And I think when we think like that, and some of that caring arises in the heart, it makes it much easier to keep going. Sometimes people have reflected on some of the circumstances that our parents and grandparents went through, world wars and, rationing and all kinds of things. And in a way, our generation has been incredibly fortunate to not have so many huge catastrophes. So now we got to do our workout, get
Right.
strong.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Janice. Thank you.
Okay.
Ayya. Patrick, did I see your hand? No.
I might as well ask a question since Francis keeps asking me.
Because you keep moving your hand so much. Okay,
Yes,
yeah.
Vanessa has her
And
hand up.
then, yep, and then I'll see Vanessa and then Lynn after that. That's fine. Yeah. So we go Patrick first.
So hi, Ayya. Nice to meet you.
Hello, Patrick. Nice to meet you.
So I actually do have a question, even though I was waiting for other people to ask first. But the thing about giving it your all, giving it all you have, and thing can be quite ego-driven at times, or can be quite disheartening. So, for example, we had a story in TBC. Somebody read a story they thought was quite inspiring about a monk in Thailand who did walking meditation 24 hours straight. 24 hours straight, very inspiring. And people in the group were discouraged. Well, I can't do that, and felt really disheartened and discouraged by the whole thing. So there's this kind of balance between ego-driven. I've done that myself. I've done, pushed myself and did 2-hour meditation, sitting in meditation for 2 hours. And the wonderful insight I had is that I was doing it purely out of ego. It was just so I could brag, which of course I'm now doing. Then I sat for 2 hours, but it was purely ego, and it wasn't wisdom. So maybe that was a question: is really the wisdom aspect of giving it all you have.
Yeah, that's right. I'm glad. I appreciate those examples, because when I said it earlier, it kind of went by really fast. But that's a big thing to look at. Like, what is behind this effort that I'm making? If it's ego driven, it's suffering. It's suffering the whole way. I'm leading a retreat right now, a 28-day retreat, and it's a self-guided retreat. So it's really helping people learn how to make these choices about what to do with their time, to not waste it, but to not overdo it, finding the balance and finding the right thing, and talking about whatever is coming out of that ego mind is really a source of suffering. So whether you achieve your objective or not, there's this stress around it, because it's coming from this sense of self. No self, no problem. But when we're coming from that place, it's going to have some stress to it. And one of the participants in the retreat talked about how the practice that she usually does is the jhana practices, and she's always like it's jhana in this kind of system where there's criteria that you meet, and she's like, I have to try to hit the marks. And she said she always gets stressed, and so that's the total antithesis of meditation. To really relax and let go is where we start to have the opportunity, or where wisdom has the opportunity to arise in us. So yes, thank you for that. That is so true. Finding that underlying kind of cause or impetus, and knowing, okay, I'm doing this because this is what the Buddha encouraged. I'm doing this from the love of the Dhamma, from the joy of being able to be immersed in that Dhamma and let go of the suffering.
Thank you, Ayya. Thank you, Patrick, for that wonderful question. Vanessa, and then we'll go to Lynn after.
Hi, Ayya. Thank you very much for speaking. It's wonderful. My question actually sort of piggybacks onto Patrick's. It's very similar. It's about balance. As a layperson and an old layperson in this life, I won't be here that much longer. I'm finding that I'm wanting to just, like, I guess one of the things I often say is, you know, I'm not doing this because I want to be a nun. So when I want to just sit back and watch Netflix, for example, I feel guilty. Oh, I should be meditating. Or I should be, when I want to just read a regular fiction book, you know, I think, oh, I should be reading the Dharma, you know. So I'm always feeling a little bit in conflict. And I'd just like you to comment on that, because I know it's suffering for sure, but I don't know how to alleviate it without becoming a nun. And I don't really want to do that in any way. I'm too old. I would if I wanted to.
Sounds to me like you're putting in causes and conditions for the holy life next lifetime.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll do it next time around, but it's too late now.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's really important that we notice this tendency towards guilt, first of all. And a lot of this, I think, is an overlay of the Judeo-Christian approach to life,
Yeah.
on top of our Buddhist beliefs and understandings. So it's good to recognize, oh, there's guilt. Well, there's no guilt in Buddhism. It's not. It's not part of the Buddha's teachings. You know, we have hiriotapa, which is a healthy regret or remorse over things that we've done that are actually wrong. And when you're a layperson and you have 5 precepts, you're not doing anything wrong by, you know, watching Netflix or doing Sudoku or, you know, whatever you choose is pretty innocent kinds of things to be doing. And so look at your behavior relative to the 5 precepts and remind yourself, I did not kill anything intentionally today. I did not take anything that wasn't given, etc. And then that's where the virtue is. That's the, you know, those other precepts about not having entertainment and all that, they're training precepts. The main purpose for them is, of course, to reduce the sense input so the mind isn't as agitated. And also, you can't use watching Netflix as an escape from the way you feel, or eating, or oversleeping, or anything. You can't use those things as a way to get away from your suffering. You have to work through it. You got to turn towards it, right? So those are the things to watch. If you're picking up, you know, doing something because you just want to relax and enjoy yourself, do it, and then give it all you've got. You know, really just be there with that experience. And if you find yourself participating in entertainment for the purpose of ignoring how you feel or suppressing how you feel, if you ever find that, then turn towards how you feel and use the practice. But if that's not it, if it's like, yeah, I'd just like to take a break. You know, I want to read a good novel. I want to talk about it with my friends. There's nothing wrong with that. And to just
Thank you so much.
you know,
And thank you so much. It's so simple, but it is complicated. And I was brought up in a Christian household. My father was an Anglican minister, which I'm sure, you know, is hard for my brain.
I'm sure it had many benefits and challenges.
I'd put it the other way around, actually. No. Thank you so much. That really gives me
You're welcome.
really neat things. Yeah.